So maybe you spend time around yogis or tarot card readers and you're tired of them always saying, "Oh my gosh, did you feel that entity that entered the room?" Or, "Oh, there's such a powerful shift going on right now in the universe. Can't you feel it?" And you're like, "Bitch, I didn't feel anything. What are they talking about?" And you start to think, maybe I'm just not spiritually gifted. Maybe I just don't have those woo-woo powers that the other people seem to have. And I know for myself, I spent my early 20s living in an ashram and was surrounded by people who were telling me about all these extrasensory experiences that I couldn't quite access. And I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like, hey, maybe I'm just a dolt. Maybe I'm just some sort of clod. Maybe I am not spiritually gifted. Well, more often than not, we actually have spiritual gifts that we may not be aware of, and sometimes these people are just talking out of their asses. But in today's video, I want to give you 15 reasons why you might be spiritually gifted and not even know it. Hey, if we haven't met before, I'm Kay, and this is Ecstatic Self. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below along with the bell next to it so you can be alerted about upcoming videos that I post. So let's dive in right into number 1 on this list. Alone time. Do you find that you frequently need to spend time away from other people? Or as you get older, that crowded situations like street festivals or parties just don't feel so good anymore? While this can be just a sign that you are embracing your introvertedness and that we kind of grow into that as we get older, it could also become a sign that you are aware of the vibe of your surroundings, that you find that being around a lot of chaotic energy, a lot of people, feels a little overwhelming. For myself, when I was younger, I really had no qualms with going to large events. Like, I enjoyed street festivals, I enjoyed concerts and large venues, but as I've gotten older, I've come to realize how, when I get around all that, I start to feel ungrounded. I start to feel like I'm taking on a lot of things that aren't mine, and I really want to be in calm, tranquil environments, and being around people just frankly taxes me. I need to spend time on my own or with 1 or 2 other people who I really love and who really nourish me, but being around too many others is just too much a lot of the time. I can do it if I absolutely have to, but I'd prefer not to have to. Item 2 on this list. You go and meet a friend for coffee, and before they even open their mouth, you kind of have a sense of what's going on for them. Maybe you just think you're good at reading facial cues or body language, and that's a big part of it, right? Being observant, being aware. But sometimes those of us who are a little more spiritually gifted or advanced are able to pick up the resonance of someone. How are they feeling? How are they doing? What's going on? I know for myself, as I've grown in my meditation practice and grown in my own trust in my abilities, it often feels like a little billboard pops up next to a person saying, this is some of the stuff that's going on for them right now. I can start to suss out elements in their recent past or in their history that start to make sense, that starts to put puzzle pieces in place to help me understand them. So if you find that you kind of get a good sense of what's going on for somebody you care about without them needing to tell you about it, that might be a sign that you have some burgeoning spiritual abilities. And it's not always just with people that you love. You can also pick it up sometimes just with randos on the street, but whatever you're finding, it's good. Item 3 on the list. You feel an energetic pull towards animals. Now, in Wiccan traditions, they talk about this idea of having familiars, like a little spirit guardian of an animal. And this is my little spirit guardian, Mr. Galileo Aloysius. Oh, you're so good boy, thank you. He and I have a little special bond where we just feel like we really understand each other and know each other. Thank you, buddy. He's my little amigo. I just feel like he's one of my best friends in the world, and it's not just him, but often other animals that I meet too. Like, I feel this sacred resonance within them. I feel a connection with them. They don't just exist as part of the natural world, but they exist as these majestic manifestations of cosmic energy. If you have a special relationship with animals, Mr. Alawoo, Galileo, thank you. He's a good boy. It might indicate some latent spiritual abilities that are starting to develop. People who are spiritually gifted tend to have an awareness of the sacredness of all life. Human and flora and fauna. Every life is precious. Not just the gifted ones, not just the talented ones, not just the beautiful ones. Every sentient being. And speaking of the natural world, number 4 on the list is the ability to sit in sacred awe with nature. So maybe you've been camping or hiking and went on a trip to a waterfall or a glacier or a redwood forest. And while you were there, you felt this overwhelming sense of awe and majesty. This ability to be present to the wonders of the natural world, to feel the sacredness, to feel the hallowed nature of creation is a big part of being spiritual. Part of the reason my husband and I moved from city life out to living in the country is wanting to have more of a connection with trees and plants and the animals of the forest. And while there are elements of city living I really miss, like getting to walk everywhere, I really do enjoy the feeling of peace and serenity that the natural world provides. Studies have shown that in order for humans to be fully happy, we need to spend about 3 hours a week in nature. And that can be broken up into 30-minute chunks, but if we don't get that nature time, we don't feel intrinsically well. And if you feel yourself particularly sensitive to this, well, it might mean that you have a good level of internal awareness and a great connection with yourself and the natural world. Let's move on to number 5 on this list. Silence. For a lot of individuals, the idea of being in silence is terrifying. They always have to have the news on or music with words. There has to be voices around them. Studies have actually shown that people who frequently listen to music with words tend to be actually a little less intelligent than people who prefer music without words. So are you comfortable to sit in silence, to be with yourself, to hear your thoughts? Can you spend a day where you're listening either to background classical or symphonic music? Can you be alone with yourself and like the company you keep? Can you turn off Netflix and be okay? If you are quiet, might indicate that you have some great spiritual potential. Number 6 on this list. You don't have very many friends. You have a couple who are dearly beloved, who are so close to you, but overall, you don't like to socialize with a ton of different people. And there's a good reason for this. The quality of most people on the planet is not that focused, right? They're usually pretty wrapped up in their own dramas with stuff going on, and bitch, we just ain't got time for that. There ain't no time for that sort of drama. If I'm gonna spend time with people, I wanna make sure it's in a nourishing, beautiful, sacred experience. I want people who really get me, who want to be with me. And there's frankly few individuals who I can invest that time and energy to cultivate that quality of relationship that I'm seeking. And so I don't have very many relationships. I have a few very, very close friends, and those people are where I get my sustenance. Because frankly, I just won't settle for bullshit. I won't settle for pettiness, lying, fakery. And so if you want to get close to me, you gotta bring vulnerability, honesty, integrity, and a lot of love. So I find I have a lot fewer friends than most people do. But those that I have are wonderful, and I am so grateful for them. Number 7, and this one is a little bit of a harder one depending on how you're living your life. Maybe you're doing it, maybe you're not, but at least you're aware of it. We are creatures that are part of the natural world, and the natural world follows rhythms from day to night, season to season, and so we should too. Do you find that you feel drawn to become quieter when nighttime comes and to be more awake during daylight hours? Do you find yourself being called to observe sunrise and sunset? Do you notice the transitions from seasons and feel like your life should complement the quality of the environment outside? Being aware of the equinoxes, the solstice, the phases of the moon, these are all usually things that people who have a lot of spiritual potential usually have some sort of connection to. Number 8 on our list, you have a unique relationship with media. You tend to find that the things that the rest of the world says is awesome, like horror films and really violent movies and apocalyptic scenarios, just make you kind of a little uncomfortable. Maybe you cognizantly or subconsciously realize that the energy that we consume and the energy that we put out there, the thoughts, the words, have a resonance, and that resonance creates our world. And you just don't want to fill your orb with that kind of shit. Maybe you notice you have a special propensity towards enjoying books and how literature can take you to different worlds in a way that visual media just quite cannot. You feel bad that you're missing out on cultural trends, but you just can't take it. Like for myself, I love everything fantasy. I cannot tell you how excited I am for the new Wheel of Time TV series that's coming out because it's one of my very favorite book series. But a couple years ago, I felt so effing left out because everybody else loved Game of Thrones. And I'm like, this should be my jam. Dragons, fantasy. But I tried to watch and even just the first episode and I was like, I cannot get past all the sex and violence. Like that's just not my jam. It does not make me feel good. And so maybe you feel like you're missing out because you can't watch Squid Games right now, despite everybody else loving it. Number 9, you sometimes have experiences that you can't explain, especially just overwhelming feelings of joy or ecstasy or bliss that for no reason something will just wash over you and can't quite explain it. A feeling of holiness, a sense of sacredness. Now, this might just mean that you're crazy, but it could also mean that you're tapped into a sort of cosmic vibration that even though you don't know what's going on, that you're feeling something on a subconscious or energetic way. And they say that enlightenment can strike at any moment. And so sometimes those feelings of ecstasy, those feelings of awe, those feelings of gratitude and love just overwhelm us. And so maybe one day you're baking cookies, sticking them in the oven, and all of a sudden your heart is overpouring with love. Maybe for someone specific or something specific, but maybe it's just more generic. Either way, it could be a sign that you're spiritually gifted, that you're tapping into something. Next up, intuition. Now, this is something that is more like traditionally obvious, that you have some sort of paranormal, psychic, spiritual aptitude, but you just kind of get a feeling about things. You get a feeling about that creepy guy who lives next door. You get a feeling about something happening next month and you need to keep your calendar open. You get an instinct that, yeah, I should buy this house because it's a really great opportunity, even if it doesn't always make logical sense. You have really good, what they might call, gut instincts. You don't know how you know, but you trust them, and a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times it turns out right. I know for myself, like there's been numerous instances of that. Like one very memorable one was like 3 years ago. I said to my husband, I have a feeling we're gonna have all of our student loan debt paid off within this next period of time. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, there is no way in hell that is happening. We've got at least 5 more years. I love your thinking, but it's just not gonna be. Sure enough. What happened? We got it all paid off exactly as I thought it would. Similar things have come up around people I'm going to work with, places we're going to move, when we're going to move, all that kind of stuff. And again, not that you're always right, but your feelings are usually pretty good. Or if you are wrong, maybe it just wasn't at that moment. Maybe it happens at a different time or in a slightly different way than you were expecting. So how is your intuition? Do you find that it's surprising you? Might be a sign that there's more there. Number 11 on this list. You are attuned to something that this modern world overall undervalues tremendously, and that is kindness. Kindness is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It can really change another person's day. It can change another person's life. Being a member of the LGBTQ community, I am aware how suicide or thoughts of suicide are very commonplace for my brothers, sisters, and siblings. Nearly 30% of us will consider it at some point in our life, or even follow through. What would it mean for someone in that state to have somebody reach out to them and say, hey, I've just been thinking about you. I love you. How are you? You matter to me. Even for those of us who are just having a bad day, what would it be like to have somebody go out of their way to be kind? I find it really discouraging that we as a culture have become so accepting of rudeness, bullying, unkindness, that people say and do things online, they troll, or now especially since 2016 feel emboldened to start to do it in real life, where that's just not okay. We should treat one another like we ourselves would like to be treated. Better, certainly better than we actually treat ourselves for most of us. Kindness is not to be undervalued, and if you find yourself to be somebody who appreciates that and notices that, that can be a sign also. Number 12. Simple one, silly one, but often true. Do you notice that you have plants around you? In our home, we have at least a few dozen, and part of that is they, again, have a sentience. They are living, they are respirating. Some studies have shown that plants actually communicate. There's research being done on that at least 2 major universities. And by having these sentient life forms in our space, we feel a little bit more well. We feel like we've got a community around us. You're aware, again, life just doesn't exist on 2 legs. Everything is precious, everything is sacred, and if you find your home filled with plants, it probably means that you have a deep level of spiritual intuition. Number 13. I got in trouble with a friend of mine once because they were talking about a friend of theirs who had passed on a couple years previous, and I made some sort of glib remark, and they're like, how can you say that? They're dead. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, death is kind of more like a semicolon rather than a period. It's just a point of transition onto a new thought. And they thought I was fucking crazy. But those of us who are a little bit more spiritually intuitive, we kind of get the sense, either very dully initially or more robustly as we evolve in our spiritual work, that death isn't the end, that it is a transition point, that these people that are gone will be missed, but it's not really the end of anything. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is one of the fundamental laws of physics. So why should we think that consciousness should be any different? Yes, you can convert matter to energy and energy to matter. So why should soul stuff be any different? And this acceptance or this calmness or this familiarity with death and the grieving process and the dying process are often a symptom of somebody who is a little more spiritually awoken. And so you may find yourself a little irreverent or celebrating death. Maybe you like having skeletons around. I love in Mexican culture the dressed up skeletons for the Day of the Dead. Maybe you find you have a morbid sense of humor. All of that is an indicator of your awareness that death is a transition that should be done mindfully, but it's not the be all and end all. Number 14, your dreams are meaningful to you. Maybe you have very vivid dreams, maybe you even have lucid dreams where you willfully travel around in them. Maybe you just remember your dreams or feel compelled to keep a dream journal. Connections to dreams is often a big indicator of spiritual aptitude. Dreams, from my point of view, can be just as much a real and tangible space as the waking world. Yes, sometimes dreams is just the regurgitating of our life experiences in the mind, but real things can happen in dreams. Real conversations, real initiations into spiritual work, being visited by deities, astral beings, aliens if you want to call them that. We can learn and grow and evolve through what happens in our dreams. So if you find your rest at night very sacred, something very profound that you approach with awe and consideration, then you might be one of us spiritual weirdos. And number 15, a strange one to end on, probably not the direction you thought we were going, but often spiritually gifted people have an awareness of their body. Often they find that they are compelled to move it daily, that they respect it tremendously, that they want to stretch, do Tai Chi or yoga or something that will get them in their body, because they realize that the connection between mind and body isn't really so much a connection, so much as it is just the opposite sides of the same coin. Our body is our mind is our body. Those two things are inseparable. And so if you want to be mentally, physically, spiritually well, you have to take care of this beautiful vessel that we are walking around in. So I tend to find those individuals who run, who swim, who play sports, whether they know it or not, have a cellular understanding of themselves, of their body, of the world, and that if you are deeply in tune with yourself, that connection to the physical often is a beautiful pairing. Now obviously there are spiritual traditions and individuals who have negated the body throughout history in pursuit of their spiritual paths, whether we look at monks wearing rough woolen garments that make them itch or flagellate themselves, or even the Hasidic Jewish community, which believes that exercise is a distraction from studying God. I really don't believe that negating the body ever leads to spiritual wellness. Those two things are pretty inseparable. To be in your body is to be well. To be well is to be in your body. It's why in my spiritual tradition, a lot of spiritual aspirants' work start with physical postures in Hatha yoga, physical yoga. That as you get into your body and move into these complicated poses, you learn to be comfortable with the discomfort. Like, hey, my foot's behind my head, but I'm gonna relax and I'm going to breathe. It teaches us to just stay there, even when we feel called to move. It opens up our limbs, it opens up our energy channels, and it can lead us into a deep experience of the self. Those of us who have a strong connection with our body tend to be joyful, full of life, full of energy, and that can lead to really great spiritual growth. So that's it. That's my list of 15 reasons why. How did it sit with you? What are your reasons? What are other things that you notice are often great indicators of personal development, aptitude, spiritual growth, propensity, all that kind of stuff? If you have something else that you think is a great indicator for the ability to do spiritual work, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to know what other things you think are hallmarks of a spiritual individual, or at least somebody who can develop into one. And if you love these kind of conversations, please consider joining us on Patreon, where we go deeper into this kind of work, have monthly hangouts, and explore things on a more subtle level. Or if you're really called to go deeper, come work with me one-on-one. I do spiritual life coaching with clients day in and day out, taking them on 12-week journeys to reconnect with their ecstatic inner self. And if you haven't yet, please check out my book, Journey to the Ecstatic Self, available online. Thank you so much. It is a sincere pleasure to be here with you. Be well.